efficient. Even great salespeople, when you watch them go into a very trance-like state, when they're, even though they're not sitting there with their eyes closed and their hand up in the air, it is in fact an altered state. Even great practitioners of medicine. There's one guy I met who is really good at diagnosis. In fact, when people walk in the door, he said, it's as if I already know. And in fact, he's got a subconscious process by which he goes through all of the things and diagnoses people. And then he just goes through the tests, mostly to verify it. Well, he's somebody that internally has built up this ability to categorize people by the way they look, by the way they smell, by the way they move, by the way they sound. Sounds a lot like Chinese medicine, actually. But he's categorized this over the years. All he does now is diagnosis. But he didn't know what he was doing. It just happened to him. To slow his mental process down really is to find out what kind of trance does he go in so that he can succeed. And, they made some movies at the head of the $1 Million Round Table. And it was actually uncanny to me how much this guy appeared like Milton Erickson, the world's greatest hypnotist, at least when I started. I have a feeling that's not true anymore because he's dead. Hard to be good at hypnosis once you're dead.
So it's with NLP and hypnosis, it's possible to take processes that are unconscious for somebody and acquire them consciously.
And also to install them in somebody else unconsciously. So that as a neurolinguistic programmer, you take unconscious processes from one person and install them in another. It doesn't necessarily have to be conscious. That making it so that kids, without consciously understanding it, automatically do things is an important part. There's a law in the United States saying you can't use hypnosis with school, but yet I see it all the time, that a lot of teachers are doing hypnosis without realizing it. A lot of doctors are doing it without realizing it, and in fact, they're not always installing the best things. When they get mad at children and say to them, you'll never learn anything, that doesn't, that sometimes this stuff sticks as post-hypnotic suggestions. And that people's ability to learn, I think, is better than most people recognize. Therefore, it's easier for people to learn good things as well as things that don't benefit them at all.
So this is quite a revolutionary approach, to take unconscious processes from somebody and install them in someone else. How do you do that?
Extremely well.
Yeah, that's I see the results of it, but how do you go about doing such a thing?
Well, to me, first you have to slow down the subjective experience of somebody who's an expert enough. And we do that by using something called the meta model, which is a series of questions that you ask that are designed to get specific information. Because if you can find out the order in which people talk to themselves, make pictures, and have feelings, you can pretty much reproduce the same kind of results. Just like people who spell well make pictures of words when they're new, and they check the feelings, the words on the internal picture against the ones on the outside until their feelings tell them they're the same. And then later on, they can put the picture up and copy it down. But they don't necessarily have to do that consciously. Lots of good spellers are not conscious of seeing images, but if you watch them, you can see them do it. They'll shift their eyes. So you have to be able to see minimal things in human beings, eye movements. You have to be able to listen to their language to hear what kind of predicates they use, whether they use words like feel, see, focus, perspective, as opposed to sounds like, as opposed to words like handle and rough and smooth.
So that's the one part. If somebody has a strategy that works well, you slow it down to find out what are the individual steps. But then how do you install it in someone unconsciously so the person doesn't even know about it?
Well, sometimes you can just lead them through it. You just you literally begin to do things. For example, with kids, I write out a word. I make every letter a different color. And then I tell them to look at the word. And then I ask them what color the L is. So if I took the word color and I made the C red and the O yellow and the L green, and I said, okay, what color is the L? In order for them to answer green, they have to have a remembered image, because if they construct an image, it won't work. They'll have different colors.
So this seems to be an approach that revolutionizes teaching and training and everything. Is that what
I think
you
so.
see? That it is happening now?
It's being used all over the planet. If it didn't work as well as it does, then it wouldn't be that in 25 years it's proliferated across the planet like wildfire. It's not what I set out to do. I started doing this for myself. and for my clients. But it's become something where the demand for it has made it so that instead of just the books I've written, there are hundreds and hundreds of books out in every field, in the field of education. There are entire school systems in the United States which now, instead of teaching people to spell phonetically, or like I like to call it, pahonically, that they're teaching people to spell using the processes that I developed. Same is true about math. Same is true about lots of things. That neurolinguistic programming has become something that's not a fad. It's something that makes things so easy that it becomes irresistible. Once a psychologist learns how to get people through phobias using the techniques we do, it's hard to turn around and want to ask them about their childhood and interpret their dreams, because that doesn't get people where they need to go. We don't have the kind of time we used to have where people can spend 5 years getting over one problem. People come in, they want to walk out a different person. And I think that's what they're entitled to. And if you know what you're doing and you're highly skilled, then, and I think people who work as an agent of change, whether they're a school teacher, whether they're a psychologist, or whether they're a, quote, personal coach, that they should have the technology, because it does exist, to be able to get people through things quickly. So that they can make it so the things they're afraid of, they're not afraid of, but they know how to get the sensory experience so they don't hurt themselves. It's not enough to just go out and drive fast. You still have to acquire the motor skills. You can think that it's easy to learn to play music, but if you don't listen, it'll sound like crap.
So that's quite an amazing success story, how NLP spread all over the world.
Well, it wasn't what I expected, but it amazes me. It turns up in the strangest of places. I've taken vacations to remote places in the world, and the first thing I see in the phone book is neurolinguistic programmers. The newspaper ads for neurolinguistic programming. I took a flight to India. I was hired to go to India to teach neurolinguistic programming. And, here these people have been meditating for, 40,000 years, and I felt kind of embarrassed going down there. But they told me, they said, our middle class is as large as the United States. And they said, and we are as screwed up as anyone. And but when I went down there, I was on the plane. On the way down, there was a guy reading a copy of one of my books, sitting in the seat next to me. I even asked him about it and had him explain it to me. He was somewhat embarrassed when he found out who I was, because the stewardess came up and said, "Dr. Bandler, can I get you a drink?" And the guy turned around and went white as a sheet. But I always like to hear people's interpretations of things. I think it's a good idea to learn to suspend your beliefs. And see, I believe that anything that is can be something which has changed, because it's the only thing we know about the universe is that it's transitory. And everything we find out, ultimately we find out some better way of doing it. We always have. My grandfather, they used to say, if man were meant to fly, he'd have had wings. Well, we built wings. Then they said, it's as crazy as trying to put a man on the moon. Well, we did put a man on the moon. We found out it wasn't a very good place to stay, but I think, that most of the things we conceive of as being ultra impossible, exceeding the speed of light, all of these things in physics are going to become possibilities, primarily because of the way we change how we think about things, not because the universe itself changes.
So the Mesmer, one of the forefathers of hypnosis, was from this area. He even got his name into the English dictionary, to mesmerize as a verb. If there was a verb to bandlerize, what would you like the word to mean?
I would like it where you give up being stupid.
Okay, so let's
where you go, that was dumb, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Okay, let's hope we can bandlerize as many people as possible. Thank you very much for this talk.
You bet.